At least we're at a minimum very, very close, and I think we're beyond very close. And I want to thank Bibi for really getting in there and doing a job.
I think Benjamin Netanyahu was desperate to get a good deal, a deal that will allow both the hostages to come back and his coalition to survive.
So this is good on paper, good on promise, probably okay on principle, but once again, you don't have the credibility to land it.
It shows the level of disrespect and power dynamics that Israel and Netanyahu can treat Trump like their own personal cuck.
President Trump has never been bought and paid for by anyone. Bibi Netanyahu surely does not have the position that he is in control of President Trump.
We're witnessing a foreign meddling operation with Debra Lea Schwartzman at the forefront as an influencer trying to put lipstick on a Holocaust.
President Trump is hosting Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House as talks of the US-backed ceasefire plan reach their final stages. Today's talks are the last and most consequential stop on a US talks been marred by controversies for the Israeli premier. UN delegates walked out of the hall in protest as Netanyahu spoke at the General Assembly last week. And yesterday he was forced to respond directly to claims that he openly boasted about controlling the United States.
He's running around, this is a fact, I'm not guessing about this, because I talked to people he said it to, is running around the Middle East, his region, and his own country, and telling people, point blank, just stating it, I control the United States, I control Donald Trump.
I don't decide a thing for President Trump. He is the most independent leader, an amazing leader that I've seen in all my years, and I think many people in the world see that. So the idea that I, in any ways that I boast that I control him, that's ridiculous. It's a lie. And I never, not only did I not say it, I don't think it.
He may not control Donald Trump, but he would apparently like to control social media. Netanyahu met a group of pro-Israel influencers on the sidelines of the UN Assembly, telling them that a Trump-backed deal for American investors to buy a share of TikTok could turn the platform into an Israeli weapon.
We have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is class
Followers.
TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important?
X.
X. Exactly. Very good. And, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy.
Reaction to those comments on X has been, to put it mildly, deeply divided. And the same can be said about the bombshell news that James Comey has been indicted for perjury. Depending on where you stand, the prosecution of a former FBI director is either justice being done, evidence of creeping autocracy, or a sad consequence of illegal warfare, which began as an attack on Donald Trump. Well, joining me to debate all this is former Deputy Press Secretary and host of Katie Miller podcast, Katie Miller, the pro-Israel influencer Debra Lea, Grayzone Editor-in-Chief Max Blumenthal, host of Indisputable at the Young Turks, Dr. Rashad Richey, plus the legal scholar and author of The Preventative State, Alan Dershowitz. Well, welcome to all of you. Alan, let me start with you. We're going to come to James Comey a little later, but the significance of what is going on right now in the White House with President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Donald Trump said at the weekend that there was basically, this war was ending, there was a deal, everyone was signing up to it. Others are more sceptical. What is your sense about where we are?
Well, I had time to speak to Benjamin Netanyahu both at the United Nations and at a dinner. Afterward, we had private time together. I can assure you of one thing, that Prime Minister Netanyahu has never said that he controls the United States or anything like it. He has said that there's a great alliance and he has respect for Donald Trump. Of course, he says that the social media are very important. I think Benjamin Netanyahu was desperate to get a good deal, a deal that will allow both the hostages to come back and his coalition to survive. But by the way, even if his coalition doesn't survive, there are now enough people outside of his coalition who support this deal that would come into a coalition even if the right wing left. So I'm now more optimistic about the possibility that Israel, at least, can accept the 21-point deal than I have been in the past. Now, whether Hamas accepts it or not remains to be seen, but I think we're probably closer to a potential deal today, this hour, than we have been for a long time.
OK, Dr. Rashad Richey, what is your response to that?
In all due respect, first of all, I would be hesitant to say what Benjamin Netanyahu has said or has not said in reference to owning the United States of America, since none of us have heard those conversations directly, and we can't be with them 24 hours. Number two, the dynamic that exists with Netanyahu is this: he doesn't have trust equity. And this is when trust equity matters. If you have broken your word prior, or at least the other side of this has had contention with your word being valuable, whatever word you put on the table this time will have the same level of respect that you showed your word the first time. So now you have a principle that looks decent on paper, but the other side of that principle, Hamas, they haven't even seen it, according to the last report. So this is good on paper, good on promise, probably okay on principle, but once again, you don't have the credibility to land it.
Katie Miller, I mean...
But remember, too, that Hamas on October 6th was part of a peace deal. They had promised peace. There was a ceasefire, and they broke it by killing 1,200 people and kidnapping 250. So certainly there's a credibility gap on the other side as well. And Netanyahu's credibility essentially is enforced by the Trump administration. So I think if Netanyahu and Trump agree to a deal, that deal will be carried out. Will Hamas carry it out? Look at their history. They haven't carried out previous deals.
Alan, just on that... Hang on one sec. Hang on one sec. I want to ask Alan a question. On that one, hang on, please. Hang on. Alan, just on you raised...
I'm going to respond to you, Alan.
Well, you will get a chance in a moment, but I'm actually moderating the panel, so I will go first. Alan, I was curious what you thought, given all your legal background, about Israel's attack on the Hamas peace delegation, trying to work out what they thought of whatever the last offer was, in Doha, a country with 10,000 American troops right there. It seemed to me an utterly stupid and reckless act. It didn't work. It didn't kill any of the Hamas commanders. But why would Israel do that at such a critical stage of negotiations? Why would you talk about trust, but why would anyone on the Hamas side now have any trust with anybody on the other side if they think every time they're going to meet to consider a proposal, they're going to get killed?
Remember, there's a precedent for this. The United States, without permission of Pakistan, went after Osama bin Laden and killed him on Pakistani territory.
But he wasn't involved in any peace process.
No, but when a country is harboring people...
With respect,
look,
Alan,
there are two
with
questions.
Respect, I do find the bin Laden analogy utterly fatuous. Everyone's used it on the Israeli side. And I'm like, hang on.
Legally, it's not. No,
but he wasn't... Yeah. But the point being, Osama bin Laden, at the time he was taken out, and by the way, thank God he was, and absolutely amazing that the Navy SEALs went in and took him out. Great. But let's not pretend that he was involved in any active negotiations with the United States over any peace deal. Obviously, he wasn't. So the parallel to me is completely different. I just cannot get my head round the thought process of Prime Minister Netanyahu at the crucial moment of negotiations thinks it's a good idea to attack Qatar and to try and take out all the Hamas negotiating team. No one can explain to me why that was a good idea.
It was not a good idea. The question is, was it legal? And the answer was, yes, it was legal. When you're harboring criminals and murderers, it is legal to cross over into borders and do targeted attacks. Was it wise? No. Was it wise? No. Had it succeeded, by the way, I think President Trump would have applauded it, and many people in the world would have applauded it. When Israel does something like that, it darn well better succeed, as it did with Iran. It failed in Qatar, and that certainly suggests that it was not a good idea. So, no, I don't support as a good idea, but I support it legally.
OK, but by the way, as we're talking, I can reveal that Prime Minister Netanyahu has apologised to the Qatari Prime Minister for the Israeli strike on Doha.
That's a good idea.
They spoke on the phone during Netanyahu's meeting with Trump, according to new reports. He apologised for violating Qatari sovereignty and expressed regret for killing a Qatari security guard. Let me bring in Max Blumenthal here. You see, Max, I just think that if you're going to ever get to peace in this awful war, which has killed so many innocent people in the process of the battle between the IDF and Hamas, if you're going to get to a peaceful resolution, at some stage, there has to be a modicum of good faith on both sides to even consider a peace proposal. I just can't understand. I mean, it's all right, Netanyahu now apologising, but what was he thinking to do this? I just can't understand it.
Well, former State Department Press Secretary Matthew Miller said, after defending Netanyahu day after day, that Netanyahu shattered every ceasefire agreement, broke every possible deal in order to survive and hold his narrow coalition together, a coalition that features people like Gila Gamliel, the innovation minister, who said the real agenda in Gaza is to make Gaza uninhabitable until the population leaves, and we'll do the same in the West Bank. Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, has said that this is a business deal, that Gaza is a business deal and a real estate bonanza, and we need to divide it. The first stage was demolition, and building in Gaza and basically taking it over for Jewish settlers is cheaper. So that's the real agenda. We're witnessing a kind of final solution that Netanyahu affirmed in May 2025 when he said, we will destroy the homes of the people in Gaza to make them leave. Today, Israel destroyed the largest residential tower in Gaza City, a residential tower, because I've reported in Gaza, that I've actually seen. And the defense minister, Israel Katz, celebrated this. They're celebrating the destruction of entire neighborhoods, which is why, while Israel is waging a seventh front war, which now extends into U.S. allies to kill the negotiating team because it was getting in the way of this final solution, they're actually extending into an eighth front, which is the United States, where Netanyahu has said that his coterie of billionaires, including Larry Ellison, must buy TikTok and buy all these media assets to prevent the PR propaganda collapse that Israel's facing. And we have a panelist here who was in that meeting who appropriately compared Netanyahu and his Likud party to Donald Trump's GOP, essentially because the Likud party controls Donald Trump through vehicles like Israeli asset Miriam Adelson.
OK, Katie, I'm going to come to you because I was going to come to you before I went back to Alan. So I will come to you. But just on that point about that meeting, Debra Lea, you were in the Netanyahu influencer meeting. Do you recognise the characterisation that Max just put up for that?
I think everything that Max is saying is just honestly hysterical because it is so two-sided. Max, you are directly funded by Iran, Russia, and Qatar. The organization that you work for is directly
That's a huge
receiving
lie.
funds
That's a lie.
from the Iranian Play TV. That is proven from your own documents. It is proven that is you have received money. I've never received a dollar from Israel or the Israeli government, whereas your company, Grayzone, is directly, this is not liable. It has been proven in documents from your own company. But at the
accusing me of violating U.S. sanctions.
Yes, you claim that your organization, Grayzone, simply runs off readers donating money, but that is not true, and that is absolutely not true because it's been proven. And Piers, I just wanted to address what you said on the intro of this, that Bibi was saying that he needs to buy TikTok and that make it an Israeli weapon. I was in that meeting. I posted the video. The video that you played was my video. If you watch the video for yourself, he never said that. I was asking Bibi about what do we do in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination and the rise of the woke right with people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson creating chaos online, even with things like Tyler Robinson saying that he wasn't the assassin when he's confessed to it, trying to get a mistrial for him and not get justice for Charlie Kirk. So I was asking Bibi, because I wrote a paper when I was in college, as Max mentioned, about the similarities between the GOP party and the identities and the values of the Republican Party under Trump, and how the Likud party in Israel under Benjamin Netanyahu has similar ideologies and values, and they're cut from the same ideological cloth. I didn't say that the Likud party controls the GOP. I literally wrote that they just have similar ideological values, which I hold as a conservative Jew. So as far as buying TikTok, we saw in that video, every single person here and nearly every single commentator agrees. I've never received a dollar, so that's a cheap shot. Keep trying. My bank accounts.
You wouldn't even be here
honey,
if Netanyahu hadn't bought you.
I'm still talking. That's not true. I've been on Fox hundreds of times. I was a huge TikToker in 2020. I'm not lying. You're a liar. Anyway, I wasn't done talking. Every single person here and every single political commentator and the Trump administration will acknowledge that TikTok is a grave threat to the United States if it was controlled by China. All of us have acknowledged how China can influence the United States through TikTok, through videos, through making us dumber, through putting out propaganda, whatever it is. Same with X. Why do you think Elon Musk bought X? Because we recognize the free speech issues on there under Mark Zuckerberg.
Why is it that every single time, though, an American
emails that weapons of war change in modern times?
Deborah, let's hear from Katie. Okay, time out. Let's hear from Katie.
I just don't understand.
Wait, no. Sorry, unless your name is Katie, please don't now speak. Katie.
Every time an American female Jew speaks in our country, it is that they're bought and paid for by the Israelis. Why is it that every single time a Jew has an opinion, they must be therefore bought and paid for by the Israeli government? Can they not just have an opinion that is valid and not be bought and paid for? I just do not understand.
Well, who paid for Deborah's propaganda trip to Israel?
And let me continue by saying this.
I mean,
when did I go on a propaganda trip to Israel?
Don't all talk at once, please.
I paid for every trip I've ever been to Israel.
Don't all talk at once, please. Katie.
But what I can tell you, I was not there. I did not hear Bibi Netanyahu speak at the UN. But what I can tell you is that President Trump has never been bought and paid for by anyone. Bibi Netanyahu surely does not have the position that he is in control of President Trump. If anything, President Trump has proven that he has walked away multiple times. If you believe that Bibi Netanyahu apologized to Qatar on his own free will today, I can assure you that is not the case. There's a reason why that phone call happened during his White House visit. It is because this president takes very seriously his commitment to the American people that they will not be dragged into any more foreign wars, and that includes with Israel.
Yeah, I mean, Katie, hang on, please.
More than any other visitor.
Max, wait a minute. Just to be clear, please.
And the Soros family buys and pays for every single liberal that is existing. Every single picture you have has Soros in it. So please sit down.
Okay, but they're Americans. They're Americans.
Get in the corner.
I mean, we're witnessing a foreign meddling operation with Debra Lea Schwartzman at the forefront as an influencer trying to put lipstick on a Holocaust.
Well, you know, I actually
find protocols
let
me speak,
please.
I flew to Israel on a paid trip. I've never been paid to fly out to Israel.
Wow, this panel is what I would call insubordinate. Why can't you all take a leaf out of Alan Dershowitz's book? He's been on before, unlike most of the others. And Alan just sits there respectfully waiting for a chance to talk and then says his bit and then listens to the rest of you. Try and learn from Alan Dershowitz. I would say that one of the more insidious aspects of this entire war has been that anyone that dares criticise either side immediately gets positioned. And by the way, I've had it from both sides. So I speak from a position of authority, that when I supported Israel's right to defend itself for many months into this war, I was immediately accused by many on the Palestinian side of being some kind of Zionist monster. And then now I've been more critical of what the Israeli government's been doing this year. I've been accused of being, a Hamas sympathiser. None of this helps. Anything.
I agree with you.
I agree with you.
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Right, Alan. And, you and I have discussed this. I just think it's so unhelpful to actually getting anywhere with this, because everyone in a free democratic society, we should all be free to criticise whatever we want. And all I suggest people try and do is act less tribally and be a little bit more intellectually honest, which I think I've tried to be. Alan, on that issue, the suppression of people's opinions by branding them the worst thing you can brand them and make out that they're paid up employees. I mean, maybe some people are, right? But just to do it as a sort of brushstroke way of silencing criticism, I think that's so wrong in a democracy.
I agree with you. And if you are an agent of a country and you're paid for it, you have to register as a lobbyist. And if you don't, you're guilty of a crime. I think under the First Amendment, we have to give good faith assumption that people are speaking from their conscience, not because they're paid to speak or because they are made to speak. And I think that the issue between Israel and the Palestinians is a complex issue. I've always thought it was a complex issue. I'm hoping maybe someday we can move to a real two-state solution where both sides can live in peace, because there are no people more intelligent, thoughtful, and industrious than the Palestinian people. And if they were free to work together with Israelis on high tech, they could turn their swords into plowshares and their atomic bombs into nuclear medicine. The potential for the Palestinians and the Israelis working together is absolutely limitless. The problem has been the leadership. And I think it's so important that there be direct negotiations between the people themselves, I think the vast majority of whom would like to see a peaceful solution. But it can't occur with Hamas in control. And that's why the end result has to be a two-state solution without Hamas and with people on both sides who agree to recognize the other. Now, when the countries of Europe unilaterally recognize the Palestinian state without even asking the Palestinians to recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, or release the hostages, that created an asymmetry which made it more difficult for Israel now to move to the negotiating table. So I think that was a setback for peace. But I think, Piers, what you're doing is promoting peace, because I think you've been very honest when you've criticized Israel, very honest when you've criticized the other side, and you've brought people on who represent both sides of the issue as long as they're given an opportunity to talk. So congratulations, Piers. You've done a great job.
Well, all I've done is try to be a journalist who, doesn't have a personal horse in the race and wants to try and be constructive, bring people together who have very different views and try and reach some points of consensus. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. It's Medicare annual enrolment, and people aged 64 and above should prepare to be bombarded with hundreds of phone calls and texts from agents who are simply pushing the Medicare plans which pay them the most. This is one message you won't want to skip. Most Medicare plans change every year, and many just disappear. Even if you like your current Medicare plan, it's critical to look at the 2026 plans, or you risk losing the coverage you need. That's why you need to know about Chapter. They're independent, they don't work for the government or big insurance, and unlike others, they compare every plan nationwide. Year after year, millions of Americans end up stuck on the wrong Medicare plan for their needs, which means they're overpaying or undercovered. Chapter can review your options in less than 20 minutes. If you're on the right plan, they'll tell you. If you're not, they will help you switch. By doing this, Chapter has helped people to save an average of $1,100 a year. Click the link below to talk to Chapter and take back control of your healthcare. Call Chapter today at 910-708-7584. Let me get straight to the point. Gold is up by around 40% this year. That's not speculation, that's reality. And if some of your savings aren't diversified into gold, you're missing the boat. Here's the facts. Inflation is still too high. The US dollar is still too weak. And the government's debt is insurmountable. That's why central banks are flocking to gold and driving prices to record highs. It's not too late to get involved. Birch Gold Group will help you convert an existing IRA or a 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. You don't pay a dime out of pocket. Just text Piers, P-I-E-R-S, to 989-898 and claim your free info kit. There's no obligation, just useful information. The best indicator of the future is the past, and gold has been a safe haven for millennia. What other investment can say that? Text Piers to 989-898 to claim your free info kit on gold. That's Piers to 989-898. Protect your future with Birch Gold. Dr. Rashad Richey, I wanted to ask you a question, which is about Tony Blair, who has now been promoted as somebody who may lead in the short term the sort of power base in Gaza as it comes out of this war. Many people pointing out, and I was editor of a Daily Mirror newspaper in England that vehemently opposed the war in Iraq, for example. So I would be one of these people who think it's a little incongruous for somebody who bombed the hell out of Iraq to suddenly be the peace broker running Gaza. But is there method to that madness, do you think?
What's unfortunate, great question. What's unfortunate is that the current leadership of America and allied countries is so much in the toilet that they have to look at a previous leader for consideration. And that previous leader has to have the gravitas as a former head of state in order to be considered. There's another consideration to have nonprofit organizations be in charge of this. Some of those nonprofits are inside of the United States of America, which creates another irony in the leadership dynamic for how the execution may happen. But what you're seeing is a result of completely corrupt, failed, and adverse leadership not being trusted. And this is why recommendations like Tony Blair even exist.
Yeah. Kate, obviously you're married to Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff. I met him for the first time in Qatar, at the Emir of Qatar's state dinner for Donald Trump earlier this year. And we had a very nice chat, but I just was curious what you think about what happened in Doha with the Israeli strike, given the context of apparently Benjamin Netanyahu, during the meeting with Trump, actually telephoning the Qatari Prime Minister to apologise.
I actually think that wouldn't have happened without President Trump. President Trump, I'm sure, sat him down today in the Oval Office and said, in order for the United States to come behind you and help Israel in its intention to seek peace, you must do the right thing and apologize to Qatar. Because I think without the president's leadership, right, we wouldn't even be in a place to be having these conversations to move forward to even seek peace. It is President Trump who is continually bringing Benjamin Netanyahu to the table and bringing Hamas to the table. And if not, the Palestinian people, quite frankly, I don't even want to foresee a situation in which the United States was not involved, because I do not think that would be a pretty situation.
Right. Max Blumenthal, Tony Blair, I mean, a very divisive figure, obviously, but a three-time Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, enormous experience in the region. Obviously, Iraq, a massive black mark over his reputation there. But is it a mad idea that somebody like Blair, who has a lot of contacts on all sides of this, runs a non-profit organisation, is it a mad idea that in the short term he try and oversee things so that there can be a peaceful transition to a life beyond Hamas for the Palestinians that leads to ultimately, hopefully, a two-state solution?
Well, just real quickly on the last point, I mean, the Trump administration was told in advance of the Israeli attack on Qatar. They didn't do anything to stop it, just as they
Well, apparently they were told
the
once the attack was in play, and that did not give them any time to try and prevent anything.
It shows the level of disrespect and power dynamics that Israel and Netanyahu can treat Trump like their own personal cuck. And then transcripts from the Israeli military command show
Wait,
that...
and where is Benjamin Netanyahu today? Is he in the Oval Office?
Let me just say that Netanyahu is going to be able to drag the U.S. back into another war with Iran, just as he did before, knowing that he couldn't go in and finish a war that he started without the Trump administration going along and basically letting him escape. And most Americans don't want this. Charlie personally lobbied against this inside the White House.
Israel started the war with Iran?
American soldiers to fight and die for a crazy little apartheid state. But you have this dynamic where Miriam Adelson has contributed hundreds of millions of dollars to Donald Trump, paying for his campaign. This is an Israeli asset. And now, and this goes to the Tony Blair question that Piers asked, Larry Ellison has contributed something like $300 million to the Tony Blair Institute. And they're going to use that to collect the data of people in Gaza who will be put in, as the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation said in its internal documents, biometric concentration camps after they're ethnically cleansed from the north. And all of these tech companies, I don't know, Katie, if Elon will be involved in this, but they will come in and reap massive contracts from this Holocaust, and Tony Blair will be shepherding in those contracts as he did in the occupied West Bank as a so-called peace negotiator. This is Tony Blair's real role. And what is Larry Ellison doing in the United States? He's buying Paramount to do a propaganda film, to do propaganda films for Israel. His son is buying CBS, and they'll put Barry Weiss as editor-in-chief. This is the takeover that Netanyahu outlined in the meeting with Debra Lea and these other influencers that they're seeking to buy and control because they've lost the propaganda war. So it is an 8-front war, and Donald Trump is under, as Tucker Carlson's sources said, Netanyahu's thumb. This is the worst foreign meddling that we have ever witnessed. I agree with Alan that Russiagate was a hoax. This is the real foreign meddling scandal. It's Israelgate.
All right, Alan, your response to that and to the Tony Blair report.
Well, I like the idea of Tony Blair. He's not perfect, but he has a lot of credibility. He did a great job in Northern Ireland, and I think he may be the least worst solution. But I cannot avoid commenting about Max. I mean, basically, what he has said about, Jews controlling this sounds like it could have been
say Jews.
Part of the protocols of the elders of
I didn't
Zion.
say Jews.
He talks about Ellison. Ellison is not Israeli.
You just insinuated.
He's a Jew.
No, I said Zionists.
He talks about
Israel firsters
Miriam
like
Adelson,
yourselves.
who's an American. Yeah, I'm not an Israel
firster.
firster. I'm an American firster. I'm an
You've
American
dedicated your
firster
career to defending
who strongly
Israel.
believes
When you're not
in
defending
democracy.
Jeffrey Epstein, you're defending
I've dedicated
Israel.
my career. Dedicated my career to defending Bill Clinton,
and to defending wife
Ted
killers,
Kennedy,
but also to defending Jeffrey Epstein and Israel. The ultimate wife killer.
You want to talk about who I defend, then talk about John Adams, who defended the killers of people at the beginning of the American Revolution. Let's get to the merits of this thing. The idea is that America is an independent country. Donald Trump is an independent. What did you say?
You were according to new emails that have been. According to new emails that were reported by Bloomberg on the 26th of this month, you advised Jeffrey Epstein and wrote You advised
I was
Jeffrey
his lawyer.
Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein is a good person who does many good things.
I was his lawyer.
I think we could do better than that last paragraph
he was
Jeffrey Epstein said to
indicted.
you. So did you write that Jeffrey Epstein is a good person who does many good things? Because you say you don't remember doing that. That just came out in an email. And you impugned his victims, calling the girls self-described prostitutes. So when you weren't defending Jeffrey Epstein, you're defending an apartheid state.
As a criminal, I am not defending the apartheid state. Israel is the most integrated, least apartheid state of any country in the Middle East.
Right,
in
and
Jordan,
that's why it's annexing the West Bank.
If you're Jewish. In Saudi
Arabia, has a minority of the
let me finish,
population.
Please. Let me finish, please. Look.
Piers, if Max is going to interrupt this whole time, I'm going to jump in too.
Max.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's helpful if we don't all talk over each other.
There's no country in the world that is less apartheid than Israel. It has black ministers. It has Arab justices of the Supreme Court. Every Middle East country prohibits Jews from living there, buying property. In Israel, Arabs are absolutely equal. Israel is not guilty of apartheid. It's not guilty of genocide. Max is essentially a Holocaust denier because when he talks about things like the final solution,
you're a Holocaust supporter,
and genocide, what he's saying is that these things didn't happen in Nazi Germany. The idea of Jewish children being walked into the gas chambers,
they did happen in Nazi Germany, and they're happening again
that's a Holocaust,
through a new ethno-supremacist
but that
state.
That isn't happening in Israel.
And new ethno-supremacist state you support is carrying out a Holocaust in broad daylight.
Let me finish, please. Stop interrupting me. Stop interrupting.
You called me a Holocaust denier.
Self-defense, you are. When you call self-defense Holocaust,
you're a Holocaust supporter.
When you confuse trying to kill terrorists with genocide, you are a Holocaust minimizer and a Holocaust denier. So let's be very clear about that. What Israel's doing is what the United States
I got to say, Alan,
I think that
how does that make any sense?
I don't think that is anything that Max has said. So I think it's a wrong thing to say.
What he said is he's minimized the Holocaust by comparing
Benjamin Netanyahu is a Holocaust minimizer. Benjamin Netanyahu, your friend, blamed the Holocaust on Palestinians. Benjamin Netanyahu literally blamed the Holocaust of Jews in Europe on Palestinians.
Let's not all talk over each other.
You have to talk about
Don't all talk over each other.
You have to talk about who I support.
Okay, let's not talk over each other.
The idea that you
Let me bring in the other panelists,
merits.
please. There are 5 people on the panel. Let me bring in some of the others.
If everyone keeps insulting me, I'm going to respond.
All right, let me bring in Debra. I want to talk about James Comey now.
I will stop telling the truth about you if you stop lying about me.
You both said a lot about each other. Let's move on.
Jeffrey Epstein advisor.
Let me ask. Yeah, well, you know what? He was representing him. Most lawyers advise their clients.
Well, we've learned new things about Alan.
You may not like it, but they do.
I find
it's the least effective stick with which to beat Alan Dershowitz, honestly. I hear it time and again. And to me, people just throw that out when they lose arguments. It's pointless. Let me bring in Debra Lea. Debra, I want to talk to you about the indictment of FBI Director James Comey. He's been indicted on 2 charges of perjury. The first count relates to him telling the Congressional Committee he hadn't authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about an FBI investigation into what the indictment describes as Person 1, believed to be Hillary Clinton. The second count alleges that Mr. Comey did corruptly endeavour to influence, obstruct and impede the panel by making false statements to it. So this relates to an appearance before the Senate Judiciary Committee in September 2020. Now, depending who you talk to, on the one hand, this is justice being served. And if he's guilty of these, of course, he should be properly prosecuted and indeed put in prison. Others say it's Trump's revenge for what he sees as the lawfare that was waged against him, some of which I thought was ludicrous. Other stuff had merit, but we never really got to the bottom of it. Where do you sit with this action against Comey?
So I think it's very interesting. I do think it'll be important for more information to roll out, and we'll see how many of these charges stick. I think the fact that I believe there was a grand jury involved in this means that it's more likely that it will stick. I think that perjury is probably the most likely cause to get him on, or crime to get him on. But overall, I'm not the biggest fan, and I'm very cautious about Trump going after people who are very outspoken opponents of his in the past, because they already have this against Trump. They accuse him of everything, and when you do anything, whether it makes sense or not, they say, oh, look, this is what we accuse him of. He's going to lock up all of his political opponents. opponents, but I do believe in justice. And if somebody lied, and if Comey lied, and he said that he was not telling somebody in the FBI to go and share information with the media, and he lied about that, I think he should absolutely be arrested for that and persecuted and put in jail for that. But overall, I think the best thing that Trump can do right now is just let the FBI and the DOJ do what they need to do and stay away from this and not go on Twitter and not talk about how excited he is or anything of that sort. I think he should let justice play out and try to stay a little bit further away from it.
Katie, I want to play a clip. This is from James Comey reacting to his indictment.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs to standing up to Donald Trump, but we couldn't imagine ourselves living any other way. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. Somebody that I love dearly recently said that fear is the tool of a tyrant, and she's right. But I'm not afraid, and I hope you're not either. I hope instead you are engaged, you are paying attention, and you will vote like your beloved country depends upon it, which it does. My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
Katie, I suppose the obvious question is whether this is all just revenge by Donald Trump against those who made his life hell. What do you think?
It's impossible for it to be revenge because President Trump was unaware that this was an ongoing criminal investigation into James Comey prior to the charges being announced. The Eastern District of Virginia after Eric was fired. So what you're looking at is somebody who is guilty, who went on and own another video months after President Trump was out of office in 2021 and said that he was going to look for all available charges to prosecute President Trump, and that's what they did. The moment the DOJ became politicized, that was the Russia hoax. Then it was impeachment. And then it continued on to President Trump after he was out of office, whether that be the Mar-a-Lago raid, where FBI showed up at his home and went through his boxes, and then charged him with a crime when they went to the same home of that of Joe Biden, found similar files and did nothing with it because he was a two-tier justice system in which one goes after their political opponents and one looks for a real crime, which James Comey did do by persecuting the former president of the United States. To me, this is a justice system that is rightfully going after somebody who is spinning the truth, who is intentionally lying and intentionally misleading the American people. I look forward to him having his day in court because he will be found guilty.
Alan Dershowitz, from a legal perspective, what's your view of this indictment of Comey?
Well, you know, both things could be true. That is, it could be that he is technically guilty of the two crimes. One is Section 1001, that is making a false statement of Congress, and second, obstructing justice. But it may also be true that he would never have been prosecuted for this had he not been opposed and an enemy to Donald Trump. And that's what lawfare is all about. Generally in lawfare, they go after people who have done something, committed some technical crime, but selectively prosecute them. They did that, obviously, with Donald Trump in New York when they had to make up a crime. The failure to list payments as hush money, but listing it as legal payments, statute of limitations expired. In that case, they had to make up a crime. In this case, they don't have to make up a crime. There's an actual crime, two crimes, obstruction of justice and reporting falsely to Congress. And the question is, are the elements of these crimes met? But even if they are technically, if it could be established that he never would have been prosecuted but for the fact that he was an enemy, then he could raise the defense of selective prosecution and targeting. Hard to do, but it's possible. He has a sympathetic judge, and that sympathetic judge may rule, in fact, that this is an improper prosecution, even if there was technically a crime committed. So it's complicated.
Max Blumenthal, I mean, if he did commit these crimes, why shouldn't he be properly investigated?
Well, Donald Trump was targeted with lawfare. I mean, let's face it. And the Russia collusion narrative was a hoax. We exposed this at the Grayzone, even though we're identified with the left. We're not partisan. But what we're seeing here seems to go a lot further than James Comey or John Bolton, someone who should be jailed for war crimes and coup mongering, which he's bragged about around the world, but won't be in this case. I mean, it looks like the enemies list of the White House goes well beyond these figures, deep into the American public. Just look at the new bulletin that was issued by the White House on domestic violent extremism, which defines anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity, extremism on migration, race, and gender, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality as evidence of potential terrorism. And I guess, traditional American views on family and morality wouldn't include Donald Trump. But I mean, I consider what just happened with Stephen Miller's underling, border czar Tom Homan, where he was found to have taken $50,000 in a bag of cash for a bribe to the White House, to be an example of capitalism run amok. So, Katie, does that make me a domestic extremist or a potential terrorist? And how far, I know you said that you told Jesse Waters that your husband's rants get you going in the morning. Has he ranted about any other people on this enemies list? And if so, who are they?
I think the fact, Max, that you met with the president of Iran just a few days ago would put you more on that list.
Katie,
well, I haven't. I mean, what are you talking about?
Don't worry. Why was the FBI going after Tom Homan and creating an entire fake concoction of a story, create a concoction of a client just to go after Tom Homan? I would ask why the FBI authorized that investigation. Was there, in my understanding, the FBI, in order to do so, would have had to have a previous ongoing investigation in which they came across this. That is not the case in this instance. What they're doing is going after political enemies and people to entrap people close to President Trump, just as they did to my family. Let us not remind you how many times I've had my door knocked in pre-dawn raids by the FBI, by the U.S. Marshals, how much millions of dollars I've had to pay for political opponent of my husband and of President Trump. That is not political retribution. He has committed a crime, and I'm glad to see our DOJ going after those who have committed crimes in our country, because our country is nothing but a
I'm not hearing anything.
Place for laws and order. The same way we're enforcing our borders across the country, we are going to do so with the laws currently on our books.
Katie, just
was it wrong for Tom Homan to take $50,000?
Well, hang on, I was going to ask one question about that to Katie, which is just the one curious aspect of the Homan case, which wasn't taken any further forward. So there's no evidence it was a bribe by the definition of the law of bribery. However, I've not seen Tom Homan deny that he took a bag of 50 grand in cash. And that does, I mean, if it was the other way round, and this was somebody in the Biden administration, you guys would all be screaming blue murder. Why did he take 50 grand in a bag of cash?
Was it a bag of cash, or is that just the words you're using, Piers? I would be very clear and precise with the language we're using to describe what happened. What I'm understanding is that the FBI created out of whole cloth a concoction to go into Tom Homan, and who knows what was said in that conversation. But what I know of the FBI before President Trump took office is they are not honorable or honest individuals. They served one cause.
No, sure. Listen, I'm not getting into but Casey,
him in jail.
No, Casey, just to be clear, I'm not getting into the sort of wider thing about the FBI or anything else. I'm just asking. It's been noticeable to me, including when he went on Fox and stuff, that Tom Homan, who I interviewed here just several weeks ago, he's not denied accepting the 50 grand in cash. And I'm just curious as to whether you know what he accepted it for.
I have no idea. Honestly, Piers, I have no idea if he did or didn't take the cash. I haven't spoken with Tom about this at all. I quite frankly haven't kept up with every interview Tom Homan has done. I'm sure it's many on many different networks. But what I can tell you, though, is my anger is purely directed at the FBI. Because in any situation, you should never create out of whole cloth an entrapment just to try to put your political opponents in jail. And that's what they've done. James Comey committed a crime on his own accord. What they're trying to do is get Tom Homan to commit a crime for them to go charge him with.
Okay. I just think that the White House has dismissed the reports. White House spokesman Caroline Leavitt denied the accusation, saying Homan did absolutely nothing wrong. But there's been actually no specific denial by Tom Homan or anybody else on his behalf that he accepted the money. And I think that is something that it just is worthy of scrutiny, as it would be for anybody. So we will see where that all leads. Dr. Richard, let me just end with you here. James Comey, it seems to me we're now into a perpetual lawfare on both sides. And I'm not sure that enhances or helps American democracy. If each new administration just spends most of its time trying to imprison all its opponents, then America will just end up diving into a sort of abyss of recrimination and revenge. That can't be good.
I agree.
You're damn right it can't be good. And here's the reality of it. You only have a certain amount of energy every day. I don't care who you are. And if your job is to solve problems for the everyday person in a nation, you don't have enough energy, enough mental power, enough political power to do that when you are set on revenge of folk that have talked bad about you or individuals that may have actually done something that was substantive that hurt you. And here's where we are, the pendulum swinging back and forth. So one administration, okay, I can grant you the Justice Department has not been corrupt-free since day one. But black folks said that in the 60s. And if we would have taken a different look at the Justice Department then, instead of saying, well, the Justice Department is good under one president and bad under the other, hell, there's been corrupt factors with the Justice Department since we've been talking about it. So where do we actually solve the issue? Well, the issue isn't related to administration. It goes deeper than that. It's cultural. And if they're able to have a point of reference to target you, but you happen to be black or brown, they have another point of reference to target somebody close to you, and they happen to not be black or brown. Now they have a reference to target the other person close to them who may be in a socioeconomic status that would seemingly not be prosecuted for something so small. It continues to go. And that's the real issue that we have to discuss.
Yeah, no, I agree. At some point. Alan, we've run out of time. I'm sorry. I'd love to come back on this, Alan, with you another time, because I think it's an ongoing thing. But I do worry about where it all leads.
It goes back to Thomas Jefferson targeting Aaron Burr. We've had it from the very beginning. It's wrong. It should stop. There should be an absolute rule prohibiting targeting anybody and focusing on the person first. That's what Stalin and Beria said when Beria said to Stalin, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. Right. And tragically, both sides have been following Lavrenti Beria, and rather than the framers of our Constitution.
Yeah, I agree. We've got to leave it there. Thank you all very much. Deborah didn't walk out, by the way. She was always going to leave at that time because she had a hard out and we ran on. But thank you to the rest of you for staying, and I appreciate the debate. Thank you. Today's show is brought to you by Oxford Natural, makers of the Optimum Day and Optimum Night all-natural supplements. Thousands of Brits and Americans are already taking them with incredible results. Optimum Day is designed to boost your energy and support weight loss throughout the day. Optimum Night helps you relax and get deep, refreshing sleep. And don't just take their word for it. Here are just a few of their success stories. England football legend Michael Owen lost 40 pounds. Robbie, the face of AFTV, dropped over 100 pounds. Linda, a top law firm executive, lost 50 pounds. And Anita, an immigration lawyer, shed 60 pounds. To watch their full stories and find out more, scan the QR code on your screen or visit oxfordnatural.com/Piers. And here's the best part. Use the code PIERS, P-I-E-R-S, and get 70% off your first order. Get 70% off with the promo code PIERS. I'm Piers Morgan. I'm a black lesbian.
Hollywood has been trying to remove masculinity for, it seems like, the last decade.
There were tears that ran down my face, but I did not cry.
I mean, that's crying.
Your tweet about a sex tape coming next is quite
inevitable
and incredibly
inevitable.
Americans are fat pigs and British people have effed up teeth, but we're allies.
When we say good genes are the ones that...
What a load of crap. I saw Beyonce do a jeans ad. Everybody drooled over it. Should trans athletes have their own category now? What's the answer?